Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the briefing for Tuesday, the 30th of July. Okay, the synoptic situation today, reasonably similar to what we've had the last couple of days. High pressure. They've painted on here a centre over sort of Central Eastern Europe, and also one here just to the west of Ireland. We're sort of in between the two, and they've put on here this weakening occlusion. This is midday. As we roll forward to midnight, it's disappeared. So I don't think it's going to be a very strong feature. It might be responsible for some of the upper cloud we're seeing, which isn't going to help the soaring. Continuing on to tomorrow, this picture keeps changing. This time yesterday, they were showing all sorts of fronts and trough lines over the top of us. At this point, they're showing high pressure with just a trough line over northern France. So tomorrow, currently looking pretty much the same as today. Continuing on to Thursday, depends on the positioning of this trough line. Potentially thunderstorms and heavy showers. In between, probably quite good soaring, and it will be still very warm. But I think we should be fine to fly on Thursday. I don't think it's going to stop us flying. Friday, looking more unsettled potentially as this low pressure moves in from the west and throwing plenty of fronts in our direction. Winds today, pretty light at flying height. It looks like it's showing here 030 at 5, 360 at 5 knots, so just very slightly from the east, but generally from the north. SAPIC, you can see there's quite a lot of cloud up to our north, potentially associated with that front. It looks a little bit better down where we are at the moment, and into the West Country is a bit clearer, but there's quite a lot more cloud than we were probably hoping for at this time. Rainfall radar, unsurprisingly, there's not really anything on here. I'll just run through the forecast, see if we can pick up that front at all. Doesn't really look like it. There's a very weak band of showers over Ireland, but nothing that's getting anywhere near us. Okay, public forecast for Lasham today is for a beautiful sunny day with top temperature of 30 degrees. So it's going to be pretty toasty. Wind starting off quite slack from the north, bending round to the east. And humidity reducing down to about 40%. UV index quite high at 7 around midday, so lots of sun cream needed today. It is going to be a warm one, especially with the wind being as light as it is. Okay, GFS showing it to be pretty warm, of course, more to the east, but also quite warm going up to the north, 25s. This is at just after midday. This is 4 p.m. Yeah, 27, 28 up to the north. Similar in our area, cooler down into the West Country, cooler into the Wales, and of course, nice and warm going into London. Dew points at midday sat in our area about 13 to 15. Generally fairly consistent, a little bit higher into South Wales. And that's a view outside 10 minutes ago. We just give that a refresh, and surprisingly, it hasn't really changed. Quite a lot of upper cloud at the moment. Currently, there's a refresh, pretty much 20 degrees at Lasham already, dew points at 15. And you can see, look at the graph there, starting to split quite nicely. Odium's forecast, showing just 3 knots from the north, no cloud. That's nice and easy. I could almost fit that onto one line. Okay, your potential flight distance on top Meteo is as shown. It's potentially slightly better than yesterday. It's a bit more consistent. I think without the southerly wind, the sea breeze isn't quite as much of a risk today. So it looks like it's usable down to the south as well as up to the north, into sort of Oxfordshire and up to Husbos. But it's not showing it to be particularly strong. And that's probably being reduced by the fact that there's no clouds, I expect. So 10 a.m., not a lot. It looks like a little bit of a slow start. So 11 to 12, it should get going. Trigger pretty much immediately up to about 3,500, maybe a little bit higher. Going into the afternoon, this is 3 p.m. In the Lasham area, we've got 1,1800 meters, so 5,000 feet or so, and at least that going up to the north. So the thermal will be going high enough. Looking at this forecast, it doesn't look like there's much of a chance of getting cumulus in our area. And whilst we did for an hour or so yesterday, and there was cumulus up to the north yesterday, this is generally showing a bit less cumulus over the whole country than it was showing yesterday. So I don't think the chance is any higher today. If anything, it's slightly less. Sky sight then, potential flight distance. This is today. Yeah, not as optimistic, although this is a very similar picture to what we saw yesterday, and people did get something out of it, mostly big wings. Um, Looks like you need to get up to the north. North of Oxford, there's a sort of not that big of an area, but a nicer looking area. If we look at a point forecast for Lasham, in our area it's showing less than 100k, but it is showing it to be sunny, with thermals getting going by about 11:30, 2 knots, up to soarable height of about 3 to 4,000 feet by early afternoon, and just over 4,000 feet into mid-afternoon. So it's not quite as optimistic with the thermal heights as top meteo, but it's showing them to be working quite well. Looks like they're working until about 4:30, where they start to die off, and not a lot by about 6 o'clock. We just look a little bit further north, then we'll go right in the middle of this good area, so sort of Rushden area. So it looks like it still takes a little while to get going, and they're showing some upper cloud interfering. But thermal strength's a bit stronger up at 4, just over 4 knots, and maybe even a little bit of cumulus towards the end of the day. Soarable heights noticeably higher, up to almost 6,000 feet. And yeah, they're just showing a bit of cumulus here from 3:30 till 5:30. So if you can scratch away, get yourself up to the north, it looks like there's a bit more to be had. Down to the south and to the west, it's not showing it to be very good, but as we learned yesterday, it's very much just a forecast. Okay, no TAMs. There's really nothing to worry about. If you are going up that way, the only thing I would mention is number 40 here. There's Microlight Championships, increased aerial activity. That's just to the east of Husbod, so probably be carnage around there. I'd try to avoid that if I were you. But there's no restricted area or anything. Otherwise, just paragliders and all the usual low stuff that doesn't really affect us. Okay, setup wise, it's going to be 09. Standard setup with a launch point on the runway, winch cables running down the edge of the runway here. Winch might have to come in a little bit depending on how strong the northerly is. Gliders winch launching from the grass here. Probably needing some correction to the north, but we'll see what the wind's doing. And aerotows from the north of the runway. I would encourage us to not grid if we can avoid it today. If we do, start the gliders behind the runway. It's not going to be a very big grid, so have 2 rows behind the runway. The aerotow performance is going to be quite limited given the heat and the lack of headwind. So if there's not many of you, up to about 10 or 15, I'd rather you just come to the runway and we'll launch you off the runway. That does lead me to my next point, which will make that ever so slightly more annoying. We have a light aircraft arrival at 12:10. That lands over the top of the launch point, that's fine, but it needs to get back into the 2XL compound. So really, we need to try and leave some of the runway clear. I will speak to 2XL, see if I can liaise them potentially coming back this sort of route around the tarmac this way, which will allow us to have I say a grid, at least an aerotow queue on the runway. So bring your gliders out. If you're going to fly them straight away, then put them on the aerotow queue. If you're not going to fly them, please put them south of the centre line, i.e. parking in this area here, and nothing north of the centre line, leaving a gap here for the aircraft to get back through. I hope that all makes sense. If you're not sure, please just come and speak to me. But basically, I'd rather you not grid unless there's loads of you. So just come and bring your glider to the aerotow queue and go, or if you're going to park it south of the centre line. For the club pilots, we have 5 K21s, 2 K13s, 2 baby grobs, SH6 is in for its annual at the moment, and all 3 discuses. Another reminder, please do not land on the cross runways south of the centre line, i.e. the very poor condition parts. Please treat them as emergency only. A simulated launch failure should not result in an emergency unless you really messed it up. So instructors, please take over as necessary to avoid landing on the cross runways, because we've gone through a lot of tyres this year. Ignore them. Well, we've got no large movements, but we have got that light aircraft movement. Ground handling is getting better. Please all make sure you're working on that. And the simulator is as serviceable as always. Okay, looks like quite a nice day. It will be very warm. I will see you out there. Bye for now.